Okay. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Carver Capital Outlay Committee. It's time now is 7 o'clock. Will we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Oh, thanks.
I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So I'd like to thank Area 58 for recording tonight. So we'll just go down our agenda. Do we have any town administrator or finance director updates?
I'll turn it over to Karen.
I do, so we're moving forward we've received all of the FY26 requests for the budget for the town, and so we're in the process of going through those. The town administrator will be, looking at balancing the budget. We have all the capital requests that were received from all the departments. We have the 10-year capital plan. We're scheduling a meeting with departments to look at our capital plan next week for all the departments, because I think it's good that we all, have a good understanding of all the requests are, other than ones that are just for FY26. We're looking at the entire 10-year plan, where Hilltop is going to be coming to the town on January 21st to talk about all of our debt service. They're going to go over a whole summary of the debt that we have, everything that's not excluded. If you have any questions that you'd like answered, I can add them to the list of a summary of what I'd like to have them present. But that's on the 22nd, so if anyone, on the 21st, if anybody has anything that they'd like to discuss, I will make sure that that's included for that meeting. Okay. And I have a list. I can always send everyone the list that I have, of the summary that I think will be most beneficial for the town, and if you have anything else, you can add to that.
Is that a meeting just internal for the town, or is select board going to that meeting?
That's a select board.
It's a select board.
Select board,
It's
at the select board
Yeah,
meeting?
the select
Okay.
board meeting.
We're actually hoping to be like a joint meeting, select board, finance committee, and capital planning committee.
Okay, and all members of the committees, or
All members.
all members?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Also coming in that night would be Old Colony to
Okay.
talk about the next school, so that's
Yes.
a big ticket item for town. Right?
So they'll have an
Yes.
estimated number that is our share of the
Yes.
net after MSBA grant.
Yeah. So there's a meeting with Old Colony on Monday night. I'm assuming we'll get the number that night,
Yeah.
just so you know.
And I've reached out a couple of times asking for numbers too, and then also where we're going to end for FY25. We have the on tomorrow, and if you'd like, I can send a copy, the select board, finance committee, and your committee. I'll send a copy of where we are for FY25 halfway through the year.
Okay.
Departments seem to be pretty much in line with where we should be for the first half of the year. Nobody should be, over 50% spent. Sometimes you have invoices where it's just one-time payments that happen, but right now we've been paying really close attention to town spending, and people are adhering to it, so I think that's good news for the town. I'll also be looking at presenting at the next select board meeting our revenue, so we know where we stand in terms of our revenue projections, of what was projected and what we brought in for revenue for the first half of the year.
And just so you guys know, to back up to the Old Colony building, I'm one of the town members here for Carver for the Old Colony building study. I missed their last meeting because it was the same night as the finance committee meeting, but the next one's this Monday, and they have not told anybody what it's going to cost yet. So hopefully this
Oh, interesting.
they wouldn't like in a number yet.
Okay.
Probably didn't get the money this month yet.
Yeah.
So that's all the updates that I have right now. I have some handouts.
Yeah, you going?
I think you probably already have this. This was the capital improvement plan, the 10-year plan. One thing that we're doing, and we're going to be discussing this on next week with the department heads, there's a lot of projects that were funded through ARPA. And one of the areas that S&P mentioned that they were missing in terms of our 10-year plan is having a funding source. So
Okay.
all of the ARPA funded projects that were capital, we need to make note of those within our capital plan. And we need to include those. This is going back since we received the funding. Because all of the capital projects that were funded through ARPA funds also have to be listed as our capital assets. If we were, and then, you know, to go through the proper depreciation in terms of, for GASB. And so that's gonna be a project that I'll be working on with departments to get our total overall capital, including projects that are funded outside of the tax levy. So here I have a summary of the capital projects. Right now, for FY26, there's a total of $4.3 million that was requested. Out of that, 4.3, 761 was for the school and 3,549,000 is for the town. However, we did receive ARPA funds to cover 2 of the capital projects. So as you're going through your list, we received, we no longer need the request for 50,000 for the electrical vehicle, and the town hall replacement generator, we had 50,000 in the budget. We don't need that. It still needs to stay in the capital plan. So as you're looking at this, you'll see that I've added a column for funding source.
Okay.
So as we move forward, we'll be looking at what projects revenue source could fund these projects. Sometimes we receive grants. So, you know, there may be grants that come up. I know that there's a couple of community grants that we just got a letter from Division of Local Services for IT. So we'll see if any of the IT projects or capital needs that John has could be funded through the community grant. If we apply for the grant and we receive it, then that's less, that's gonna be a burden on the taxpayers.
Yeah.
Or, you know, however. So we have this, so I'll pass,
Okay, thank you.
if you wanna take one and pass along.
Just one?
Yeah, just one. A question, and I also have a packet, and you've received this before, but this is just a packet of, this was put together on November 19th of 2024, and it's a list of all of our open capital projects. The first page, and I'll pass it around, are the capital projects that were approved by town meeting in FY25. The second page is a list of the capital projects that were approved in FY24. It shows what's been completed and what we can close out.
Okay.
And I have a summary of the projects that have been committed and ongoing, ones that are completed and that need to be closed out. And the final page are our prior year projects that are prior to FY24 that are opened, and the ones that we're gonna close out. My idea is to close them for, where you haven't closed out 24 yet. We're
Okay.
still in the process, so those will close out, you're looking at about $400,000 in total, and that will then be certified by DOR in the free cash, which then give you the opportunity to decide how you want to fund future projects.
So just so I'm clear.
Yes.
Anything that is an unfinished project, we won't see the benefit from for a year. Okay.
That's correct. Anything, could you repeat your question? I just.
Meaning that if you said the project is, it was 100,000 and it came in at 50 and it's done, you've got 50 that you can repurpose.
Yes.
But you just can't use it this year. You have to send it back to
You
DOR,
have
go
to-
through the
they have to
process.
certify it.
And then we get it as free cash the next year.
That's correct. And then you can then take that and say, okay, all of the projects, we will say we're closing, we didn't need, they came in less than originally, funded, $400,000. You'll see that money is part of the free cash number,
Okay.
and then you'll be able to take that and decide what projects you want to fund moving forward. So I'll send a copy of this, and there was, I'm gonna take one and pass it on. And the last update that I had was a lot of people have been asking about, when is debt gonna be, when is the debt dropping off? And so I went through our debt service schedule, and we have the fire engines, and we have 183,750,000 that's gonna be dropping off. Our last payment is in 2026, so FY '26. And then we have 731,000, I'm just gonna just round out around 731,000. That drop off is 2034. And then we have 422,000, and this is for the middle high school. This is for the police station and the library HVAC. Our last debt service payment is in 2034 for 731,000. In 2036, we have the fire station, this was at the central station for around 422,300. The last payment is going to be in FY 2036. And then we have the elementary school, that final payment is in 2042. And so if you want copies of this, I didn't make copies, but if you like to have that
I like
copy.
it.
I'd like a copy.
I like that too.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's just a summary, just to
Oh.
show when in their other projects that, you know, they go out. This is one thing that Hilltop is gonna be going over, but I think it's really important as we look at projects that are dropping off, what projects we are looking at moving forward, what, and you know, if we have to start looking at infrastructure and really looking at some of the public investment projects for the town. Not now,
Yeah.
but what we really are anticipating in the next 5 to 10 years.
Just so you know, we used to get it, not the last 2 years, but we used to get this type of schedule. And then I think at the bottom, it had all the debt services and when they were dropping
Okay.
off. I don't know if that's easier or not.
Oh yeah, I can pass this around, and this is just like a summary, and it will show you the projects, it shows you the year that we issued the debt, and then I just have, instead of, I mean, the sheet of paper is probably like legal
Yeah.
+2, you know, if you look at the out years, but that just gives you an example of what
Yeah.
that last payment's gonna be for that fiscal year.
Okay.
I also have, you know, and I don't know if you want this too, but we have 2 large capital requests. Well, we have 1 large capital request for $2.4 million. This is for the fire engine. It's a fire engine bond for the apparatus, and so I have the debt service of what the debt service payments would be.
Okay.
Beginning, these payments would begin in 2029, because the ladder truck is not expected to be in for 4 years. So I
Okay.
wanted to just, if people are interested in that, I mean, these are things that we're gonna be looking at moving forward.
I'd love copies,
Yeah.
Okay.
or email or whatever.
Yeah, because we would need to decide this year, right, if we wanted, you would need the vote for bond this year for 29.
So
Purchase?
so what would happen is that you would need an authorization.
Okay.
So you would need an authorization from town meeting
Yeah.
stating that pretty much when the truck comes in, we can issue debt.
Okay.
If in the meantime, we want to put money aside to cover debt service, when the truck comes in 4 years, which is 2029, we could either, if we have money set aside, we could put a portion of that towards the truck, where you don't have to bond the 2.4, maybe you bond $1 million or 1.4. But you have to look at those different
We thought we did that a
options.
couple of years ago for for the library.
The library, yeah.
And it didn't, obviously didn't work out.
But
We thought.
what I'm hearing, maybe I'm hearing it wrong, and that is, let's just say we decide we're gonna get the truck.
Yes,
And all we have to do is fill out an order form and sign it, and it goes into some kind of pipeline, no cash moves.
no cash
And
moves.
then we sit there, and it sits there, and they do it for 4 years later, it's done.
That's correct.
Then we go out to bond at the current interest rate 4 years from now. There's no way to lock in a rate or
No,
not.
you can't lock in the
Oh,
rate.
wow.
The only thing you can do is, if you know you have to go out and bond, well, there's different options. And I think what I could do is put together what your options are, looking at what the interest rates are, and this is something that I'm gonna have Hilltop discuss as well, is that we'll say we authorize the truck this year, that way they can order it, the truck comes in 4 years. It's 2029, we need to make a payment. We can issue a ban for up to 5 years. I wouldn't advise of that if we already paid for it, because a ban, you're just paying interest to give yourself time in order to build up money to pay the actual debt. But that's an option. You know, sometimes may not have the money and they may need a few years, but you're paying interest on something you've already paid. And then once you have decided to issue permanent debt, you then have, you know, your principal and interest payments. But it does give you the opportunity within the next 4 years to save money. So we'll say interest rates go up. Instead of issuing debt for 2.4, if you're saving money up over the next 4 years, we'll say you save $100,000 up over the next 4 years, then you could take $400,000 and use that to pay
Yeah.
for the cost of the truck, so you're not issuing as much, and when you go to bond it. So I'm gonna provide some options so that you can review and look at what those options will. I'm gonna request Hilltop to look at those options, and then you'll be able to have a chance to say, okay, this is our debt service, this is what would happen in 4 years or 5 years or 6 years. We do have debt that's dropping off, in 4 years, so, this could be something where you would replace. Well, I'm not gonna get into too much detail because I don't wanna take up, but that's just a brief update, and I can get this to you.
But you should know too, to me, it's a whole new world now. I really haven't seen anything like this, where you're 4 years of wait, or really in reality, it's 3 years of waiting, and then it's a year for them to build it.
Oh, wow,
So you have
that's
to
a
put your
lot.
order in now if you want them
Yeah.
to start building it, whatever it is, 2029. Same thing, I see the ambulance on the list here. They say there's a 2-year wait for an ambulance. And now we're trying to get, we're trying to get in line is what it comes down to. I know we just waited 2 years for a dump truck. But it seems to be across the board. All the towns are doing the exact same thing, especially for this fire ladder truck.
Wow.
It's crazy.
And then if we do want this on the warrant this year, we need to make sure the 150 people at town meeting, right? Because technically, we're asking for a bond.
We're asking for authorization.
Yeah.
An
Yeah, it would be bonding.
authorization.
Correct.
Because that
So it
doubles
doesn't
the
keep
amount of people
support.
we need at the
Yeah.
club.
It's the same thing with the library project where we had the roof done. The authorization was $1.68 million. They did the authorization in FY, I think it was 23 or 24.
Yeah.
And the project was just completed. We didn't spend the 1.6, and so what's happening is that it was around 600, I want to say 600,000 that we were issued for bonds. We'll have an article in the FY '26 warrant to rescind the rest. That
Okay.
way, no one or someone coming in can't then work on other projects from that original authorization. Closes it out, takes it off the books, and then it's completed. So there's other projects that are still on the books.
Do we need 150 people to rescind?
I'll have to look at
Okay.
that. I'll look at in terms of,
Because I
let me look at that, but I'm not sure.
I'm not sure we're gonna have too much of a problem getting a quorum at town meeting. We have Old Colony,
Yep.
the North, I'm gonna put together an article for the North Carver Water District to dissolve that. So,
Okay,
I know
so it should
MBTA
happen.
zoning right now is not on there, but it could come back, so there's the
So-
potential for,
so this is why I'm asking. So sometimes town meeting here goes 2 nights, right? Sometimes,
Okay.
last year's 1, but it's typically 2. And if all of those things come up first and everyone shows up on night 1, then
And
sometimes
nobody
not there for night 2 to vote on that article.
well, this would be in the budget, right? So it'd be one of the very first, right? I think last year was number 4, is that
It should go around where the
The-
capital
Yeah.
project.
Okay.
Yes.
4 or 5?
So-
So we do it early. It's early.
So the year that I'm thinking of, John, I could be wrong.
I remember.
They
It was like
let-
22.
Yeah, they let people move the articles out of order,
Oh, yeah.
and they voted to move them out, and then when the capital came, it got pushed way down.
Wow.
Do you guys remember that?
Yeah, because
Yeah.
we were like
We were stressed.
begging people on broadcast
Yeah,
to
yeah,
come,
please
please
drive down.
come.
It allows for a cleaner process to just close your books
Yeah.
on the accounting side instead of having them open. We have, in Hilltop, we'll be discussing this in more detail. We have items on our balance sheet from old bond issues that are just sitting that we can repurpose.
Yeah.
Anything under 50,000 is a vote from the select board. Anything over 50,000 has to go to town meeting. But I'm gonna have them get into detail on that. And so that would be another article for anything over 50. I think there may be, could be $100,000 that could be repurposed, capital for whatever you want.
Okay.
But we need to close that, put it on the books for more than like 10 to 15 in the balance sheet. And so
Yeah.
they're gonna go over that at the meeting.
Okay,
Thank
Okay.
you.
You're welcome. Those are my only updates I have.
thank you. Did you have any updates, Glenn?
I was gonna hold off a little bit,
Okay.
that's all.
Sure.
So we kind of go through the projects.
So tonight we have our special guest from the school committee. We have Rowan and Scott. Did you guys still want to go over the school committee's capital projects?
Would you like, we can present it if you'd like.
Yeah, we would love that. Thank you.
I'm letting move my seat to connect here so you can kind of see it over
That'd
the
be
shoulder.
wonderful.
But I brought some printed copies as well, so you all can have the,
And we thank you guys for coming and doing this tonight.
what's that?
We thank you for coming and
Oh,
doing this.
sure.
I know it got shuffled around.
This is, you have a copy of this
Yeah.
already, it's the same one you've seen, but if you want to take one and pass it
Yep,
along, please. I don't think we,
Recording, the one we got.
if you just want to,
I'm gonna work the show.
no, I can work it from a distance actually, if you want to. Okay, stick that over here.
There you go.
I can just put this thing here,
And your
and I
remote
should be able to remote it
from your, all right, there we
here,
go.
maybe.
Pretty exciting.
Oh, there we go.
All right.
There you go. Thank you, technology. That worked for us. So thank you again for having us. We appreciate it. What you're going to see today is an overview of the school department's capital plan. It's broken up into a couple of pieces, right? So we'll talk about it in like 3 chunks. We've got facilities and equipment portion, transportation, and technology. And for each portion, we drill down to FY26, which I'm sure is what you really want to get to, but we also project out 10 years as well. So you'll get this year's information in fine-grained detail, and then an executive summary across the next 10 years for each bucket, yeah? A couple things before we dive in that I just want to give you for context. The first is that our school department puts a lot of energy and time into thinking creatively and thoughtfully around what our capital plan should look like. We have this thing called the Educational Blueprint. Essentially what that is, it sets a strategic plan for our school department, focusing on keeping our schools safe, thinking about enhancing teaching and learning, engaging with our community, and ultimately the one that I think you are all most focused on, using our resources really efficiently, right? Each year, your school department writes and is typically awarded somewhere around $1.5 million in grants. Some of those are specific to support educational programs. Some of them you'll see here in your capital plan as well. You should know that as we start to build our capital plan each year and we refocus and reevaluate, we ask ourselves those questions. How can we use our resources the most efficiently? Are there alternative ways to get funds that might offset a project or be able to cover a cost of a project? Can we find partnerships with organizations and those sorts of things? So know that that's on the front of our minds, and I think that's, when you think about the Venn diagram between the capital committee and the school committee, that's one of those nice places of overlap, yeah? Last thing I'll just share with you as you think about the big picture of this here, each of our components, so the facilities and equipment, the transportation, technology, we reevaluate them every year. So when you look at FY26, that's been in the pipeline for a few years, each year reevaluated. So if it's in FY26, it's been a priority for a while, and then sort of bubbled up to the top priority in 26. The inverse is true, and you think FY35 is out there. Those are wish list things that we expect will very likely change because the rules will change and the laws will change and the requirements will change, yeah. So that's just some context for us. I'm going to start with you looking at facilities and equipment. Again, I won't read it all to you, you've got it there, but I want to put some highlights on a few items that I think are helpful. The first is you get some context for the 4 major facilities you have in your school department. You obviously know the school buildings. Many of you were at our transportation depot just before Christmas, and we have a little administrative building right across from the post office, yeah. The middle high school is the largest, but also the oldest of the facilities. And as Karen mentioned, we've done some work on that building, despite it being in 1986, 1987. Back just a few years ago in 17, we did an MSBA accelerated repair project for like the guts and the facility structures, roof, boiler, windows, like that sort of a thing. Debt for that project comes off the books in 35. And so a lot of our facilities projects in 26 and all the way through 35 are designed to prolong the useful life of that facility. Yeah, we recognize that while it's an old building, the bones are good, right? You think about like an old house, like the bones are good, but it probably needs some updates. It's like my parents' house. It's like it's from the 50s. It's strong, but you could get rid of the shag carpet. Same idea with our middle high school, yeah? So you'll see a lot of those projects where we're thinking, how can we be really efficient with our resources, get a lot of bang for our dollar, still maximize the services and the program experience we have for kids, while trying to extend the useful life of that building for a long time.
And the only point I always add on to that is, and we're still in that position, is, you know, if we're not gonna be looking for a new middle high school till 2040, you know, when the elementary school debt comes off, whatever that exact, I don't know the exact year of that.
2042.
42, is that, well, we'd probably start the process before 2042. We don't have the building built by 2042 and have the new debt come on in theory. Would be the school's position. You know, that's a generation of students going to go through that school. You know, so you still have the kids who are 4 are going to go to school day. So we have to think about that. That's why we're asking for these upgrades to that facility.
And just to add to what Mr. Lee said, you can see that in our long-range planning, right? You see like in the upper echelon of that grid, FY33, you start to see some of those middle high school projects falling off. At that point, you're starting to think about, do you do some evaluations of the facility? Are you looking at feasibility at that point? And so you don't want to start putting big dollars into a building that you'll either do a major renovation for or ultimately tear down. Ultimately, it's the decision of the community. But so somewhere around 33, 34, you start to transition your funds away from that. You're probably socking some more money away for a feasibility study and like those sorts of things. So we try to keep that in the back of our minds when we think about our long-term planning. Elementary school, similar. You see the debt comes off in 42. We typically don't have a ton on the facilities and equipment for elementary school. We do have a couple this year for the outside of that. I'll show you that in detail. So we'll start with an HVAC project that is planning for year 2 in FY26. We talked about this last year, but I'll refresh your memories. This is a project that we coordinated for ARPA funding. We were super excited, thankful to the feds, thankful to the state, thankful to Plymouth County, and certainly thankful to you all and the taxpayers for approving that through the Board of Selectmen. Last year, so this fiscal year, we received $180,000 in ARPA funds to kickstart this project. We had originally thought it was going to be a 4-year plan. That's what we proposed to you back for 24 to 25. The good news is the bids came in low. And so we expect to be able to be done in 2 years. It's very rare I get to say things are ahead of schedule and under budget, but we're excited to tell you it's ahead of schedule and under budget. So you see the list of rooms there. There's 18 rooms that are interior to our building. Those rooms only have mechanical air coming in and out. That's original equipment in that facility that is starting to fail. Bookends of our year, those rooms are uncomfortable for our kids, uncomfortable for our staff. So what we've decided to do is these mini splits, they're a cheap way to condition that air, make the learning space more manageable for everybody. The proposal we have to the town for next year would simply be a $60,000 finish to this project. It does those last 4 rooms, we wrap this project up. And we expect that those mini splits would go through the remaining useful life of that building, 15, 20, 25 years, whatever that might be. The next one is one we punted on a couple of years. This has been on our proposals for a few years now. Again, you'll hear the theme be very much the same for the middle high school. It's an aging building. Our goal is to keep the structure, try to do some work on the interior with FF&E, furniture, fixtures, equipment. Well done.
This is sweet.
I'm still gonna cough. I've been sick for a while.
So I didn't know.
Can't shake it, can't shake it. But thank you.
The library is one, if you've been in there, it's a community space, it's a learning space, it's a good space. It's in terms of like, its orientation, it's got great light. The furniture, fixture, and equipment is original with that space, and so the intention here is simply to like give that a nice renovation, ultimately. Keep the building the same, interior work, yeah. The next is something that we've worked on for the past few years. Again, you hear this theme. We're trying to find ways to be super efficient with our resources, but still extend the useful life of that building. And so we've implemented a modernization pathways plan. Essentially what that is annually, we invest a small amount of capital in updating one department. Again, keep the walls, keep the bones, do the renovation on the interior so that kids for this upcoming generation still have an experience that is up to date, not a 1987 experience, a 2020s, 2030s experience. We've done English, we've done special education, guidance and math. SPED and guidance were together because they're tiny. And we propose that for next year we have a history classroom. Again, the history team comes together if the funding is approved. They take a look at their facility areas and decide what the priorities are. Remove some of the really old stuff, replace it with some really new stuff. That's the intention. The next two, and these are our last two for facilities proposals, are over at the elementary school. They're both outside. What you see there in the picture is a picture of what they affectionately call the hill. I imagine some really well-intentioned architect designer who probably didn't have children of their own said, what we'll do is we'll make this hill and we'll grow some grass on
I can
it.
tell you the person's name.
And the intention was that they'd use this hill as a play area, which is really well-intentioned, I'm sure looked beautiful on the designs. But if you have 750 children running up and down a grass hill, it's not gonna have grass. Our team has done a lot of things to try to grow grass there, a lot. Our proposal would be to abandon the effort of growing grass on this hill. It typically looks more like that with the safety cone sort of stuck in the divots, and simply grade the space. It would be over 2 years. The plan would be year one, grade the space down. There's a swale back there, by the way, which catches your runoff from the building across what you have for the bus lanes and then back into the woods. So there'd have to be a little bit of work with that swale to make sure it's still catching water, obviously. And then the second year, phase 2 would be in FY '27. We propose buying some simple equipment. What that equipment is would be TBD. We'd bring together some stakeholders of kiddos and teachers and families.
There's a lot of people who want swings.
Swings or slides, or make that space a useful play space again for kiddos, would be the simple intention there.
Ron, just like, is it worth just getting rid of the hill? Like, I mean, can you or no?
That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna
Grade it
flatten it
down.
out.
Okay.
We're gonna level it and put play equipment,
Yeah, yeah.
determine down swings, check
Yeah.
on swings.
Yeah, we'll grade it, the plan, if it's approved, would grade this year down to flat.
Okay.
Put some wood chips on, that's cheap fall protection. You could do that poured stuff, which is nicer, but way more expensive. We're trying to be efficient with our resource. And then the following year, swings or something like swings. And then the second one is, I'll say, our reach. I'll be very plain with you in terms of priorities. This is probably our lowest priority, but it'd be a helpful one. So what you're seeing there is an aerial view of your elementary school. It looks like that backwards E with the 3 wings. Between those wings, those same well-intentioned designers have these lovely undulating pathways. Around those pathways are grass. Natural grass, it's a beautiful play space, it's gorgeous, and only certain times of the year does it ever keep grass because we have high traffic there.
And it tracks into the building.
Dirt
It's a lot of
and
mud.
mud and
Yes.
all of
But that
those
never came up in the whole planning, right, for the whole school when we did that?
No.
Well,
Well,
we
we-
Go with
talked-
artificial turf.
No, we
you say, what
right, we
about
talked
turf?
about, we said that we have beautiful courtyards.
Yeah.
And this courtyard stays better.
Yeah,
This one's always a disaster, because the main playground's here.
Yeah.
You know, so it's just almost impossible to keep grass there, so it's just become dirt. The other one's a little better in terms of maintaining the grass.
yeah, less volume.
Yeah, so it's good, it has less volume on it.
We've tried some things internally to go super cheap on planning here. So last year, maybe the year before, we kept the kids off it for about 2 months and we grew grass, which was great for growing grass, but not great for kids. So my apologies if you had children who were frustrated with us. We were trying to grow grass. We got the grass
Yeah,
grown,
we
kids
combed
came
all
on it.
off.
Yeah. So anyway, the proposal here would be to do an artificial turf there. We've looked at some models. I won't bore you with too much detail, but the big picture is, it is similar, if you've seen our turf field out there, to the turf field that we have, with the exception of what's called the fill. Those are little bits that they have between the grass. Most athletic fields have a rubberized fill. There is scientific debate about the safety of that rubberized fill. It's essentially reprocessed tire bits.
The black stuff that gets carried
Yeah,
in the
it's
back,
in
it's
house,
all
right,
cleats,
right,
yeah, I
Pour
know
out the
exactly what
cleat,
you're talking
that
about.
stuff, yes.
Yeah, we get some of it.
There's a model that people use for elementary school playgrounds that has what's called a cork fill. It's artificial cork, but it is a wood fill, so you could eat it if you wanted to, and sometimes elementary kids eat all sorts of stuff. My point is, super safe when it comes to the fill, and the proposal would be to utilize funds here to replace that area with artificial, high volume area. What I might do, if it's okay with you, is pause for questions at each section. So questions on facilities, equipment, proposals.
I guess, oh, right, this is more of an accounting question than anything else. When you talk about the classroom modernization pathways plan, that money's spent. I'm assuming what you had said before is you've got a capital request where everybody explains what the bid, the process, what's being bought, what's being used for. So this then goes on to a depreciation schedule. So all these costs are strictly equipment, knocking down walls, flooring, ceiling, these are all capital items?
Yeah, those are all capital items. I mean, we'd have to go through the list. I don't know what was submitted to get for last year for the fixed asset. I'd have to look and see, useful life. There's a lot that goes into analyzing that. And
But when this gets completed, it goes
Yeah, when
on
it's
your, it
completed,
goes on your
yes.
fixed asset
That's
schedule
correct,
and gets
yes. Once it's
depreciated.
completed, That's correct. Yes.
And it's mostly furniture, so we haven't like redesigned spaces, we haven't knocked down
Okay.
walls.
No
and-
walls.
No, it's mostly furniture.
Big pieces of equipment.
Yeah. It's all new desks.
Equipment?
Yeah, equipment as well sometimes.
Panels?
yeah.
So sometimes equipment depending on,
Panels up above too, is that
no, that's a separate project.
separate? Oh.
That's our, yeah.
Hey, Ron, going back to the executive summary, I see there's a replace turf surface,
Mhm.
FY '29,
Yep.
1.2.
Yep.
So that FY '28,
Current stadium.
FY '29, your turf will come off your books. You typically have to replace your turf every 10 to 12 years. So at a certain point, you'd have to replace that turf. What we do right now is we mend it. So there was a couple tears over the past couple of years. They come in, they literally sew it. More complicated than sewing, but the idea is the same. But you typically have to replace it roughly every 10 to 12 years. So you can see that FY '29 placeholder, and we've had it for several years now, is intentionally blank on all sides with the goal of trying to maximize our local resources with less bonding, right? That's the intention. Would you have to bond? Some expert who's smarter than me would have to decide that, but the intention is to not ask for anything else in that year to sort of maximize local resources.
Currently, Glenn, just so you know, I don't know if you're aware of this or not, all of our current field rentals for that field go to the replacement of the turf. It probably has 105, yeah, so they're a little over $100,000 in it now. You know, so it's not gonna pay for it, but it's gonna have $150,000, $200,000 in it
Yeah.
to go towards that cost.
Yeah.
Can I just mention something just on the side too, when it comes to turf? Because you have the other turf over here for the playground, and that's gonna be around the same time they're gonna need it redone. So just putting out there that maybe you could do like a bulk turf for the whole town.
Save some money.
Save
Double
money.
the mobilization contract costs.
Yeah.
How come that turf isn't gonna last as long as the one at the school? Weren't they done like quite a few years apart?
It's a different type,
Okay, all right.
yeah, and it's
What
really.
turf is over
it's-
here? Are you talking about the play surface?
Yeah, the play
Yeah.
surface in the back, the
That's not a-
rec.
That's just not a turf. That's a port in place, is that what you
It's a
mean?
port in place.
Whatever
The
it
rubberized
is,
stuff.
it's
Yeah.
awful.
Yeah, it's not the,
Different stuff.
it's not
Yeah,
the turf.
We don't
field.
have a contract that's expired for fixing it, so
It's
there's
the-
that whole
It's the
piece.
same stuff that's in the playground.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
rubberized
Yeah.
port
The
in place.
rubberized, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm just
Yeah.
bringing it up, just to put it out
Okay.
there.
Have you presented any of these projects to the CPC?
Yeah.
We've presented a few different projects to CPC over the past few years. A few years ago, we presented a project to redo one of the soccer fields that's up on, what's the street?
Pond Street.
Pond Street, with a
That's
partnership
on here.
project between the school department, general government, and CPC. CPC said they didn't have any interest in that project, so we,
And CPC cannot do a turf field.
No, yeah, I know that.
So they
But
can't
I was
do the
thinking
turf.
about some of the equipment, so some of the play structures that you want to put on, and I think that was a couple of the previous ones. Those are eligible. I think we really should, probably have the CPC come and meet with the capital committee, because even though the CPC are coming up with projects, we have a pretty large amount of money that the taxpayers are spending with these projects that are eligible. We should really start looking at some of that money that's just sitting in a reserve account, millions some odd dollars, for projects that we could be using for capital.
So CPC has come, and I think we funded quite a few things the last few years for the recreation.
Yes.
pickleball was one, right?
Pickleball, yeah,
So
yeah.
that's something we should think about as well. We're looking at the 10-year plan and bringing them in, so we can see what capital projects they're looking at in addition, because it's still part.
Do you know when their bond comes off? Because
I
they bonded the current football field, stadium. They can't buy the turf, but they paid for all the other work.
Oh, yeah.
So they can do, all the other work can be done, just can't buy the artificial turf.
Yeah, this is coming off in a few years. I was looking at that earlier. I didn't bring it to this meeting because it was CPA.
I want to say it's 28, because I think that's what we targeted,
We're gonna go
29
nine,
is my belief
Because it might
about
be able
that.
Yeah,
to
it's
go back.
around- it's
it might be able
around
to-
time.
Yeah, it might be able to go back to capital and say.
Yes.
Do some combination work. But to answer your question, Glenn, that's why you see a blank on everything else in that
Yeah.
1.2, knowing that's a big chunk of money. Okay. Any
Yeah.
other questions for facilities and equipment?
No.
Good questions.
And I guess the last thing I'd say to Phil is, it may not have to be done in '29.
Yeah.
It's got to be done soon around there, that's the reality.
Yeah, yeah.
Their
Be
their
planning
their
for it.
useful lifespans are 10 to 15 years at a stretch.
So your next bucket is transportation. Again, you've got an executive summary here. Again, I'll give you the 10,000-foot view of it. You can see the fleet list that's there and our 10-year projection. The vehicles range in age from about 2009, that's our oldest vehicle, to new. And typically every 10 to 12 years, thanks to the New England winters, we're in a replacement phase for a vehicle. I'll share with you two other things quickly about this before I dive into FY26. I just know we had our field trip over the depot, and we had lots of questions that were all sort of revolving around, hey guys, why don't you just sell all these buses and contract it out? So I want to just hit the elephant in the room right off the bat if I can. My professional opinion on this is it is in your best interests to maintain local ownership and operation of your program. And I'll share with you 2 reasons why, and then give you maybe like one local anecdote if I can, right? So typically one of the big benefits of locally owning and operating is that you have control and better service. And that's true here in Carver. Almost everybody involved in your transportation program are taxpayers and are voters here in town. And so they know our kids, they know our families, but they also are aware of the amount that they pay every year in taxes and have an eye to that. Everyone from your transportation director and your mechanic down through the large majority of your drivers are taxpayers here in town. Yeah. The second, though, is just straight cost. It's typically less expensive to own and operate your own program. The rationale there is pretty straightforward. If you, and some communities do, if you go out and contract with a for-profit company, they're for-profit. And so your community here is just break even as best we can, and a for-profit company is going to have shareholders and a CEO and whoever else, a corporate headquarters in Chicago to maintain and all of those things. I do an analysis every couple of years. I'll share it with you here if you'd like it. I think I shared it with some of the school committee members a month or so ago that asked about it. I don't do it every year because every year the numbers don't change too much, but you can get a sense of what it looks like here, and I'll let you peruse this as I'm chatting with you all about our proposal. It's 2-sided. One side is your regular education, so that's the big yellow buses. The other side is what's called the 7D, out of district, kiddos with disabilities, homeless, displaced, like that sort of a thing. I'll go through it in a little bit, but I'll let you peruse it as we chat, and I want to be respectful of your time. Yeah? So let me go through FY26 as you're kind of digging in, looking at that as well.
I'll tell you what, Ron, actually I want to address this before you leave it, because I just came from the town of Rochester, and the contract just ended, so you say you don't update it too often. You might want to get new numbers. The last time we went out to bid, and Rochester rent, right, they lease, I want to say the cost doubled.
Oh, wow.
The last contract, so be very cautious. Before you sell any buses, put out an RFP and get the cost back in, I'm telling you, before you sell the buses.
There's no intention from your school department
Okay.
to sell the buses. I want to be
Just
really
be-
plain about
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
We want to maintain.
Be very cautious.
But occasionally people say we should sell our buses. And
Okay.
Yeah, it's,
So
we
that's
understand
not-
that it's not in our best
We're not
interest to do
interested in
that.
Okay.
Just one last example that's an anecdote, if I can. Our colleagues over in Plymouth, who have a bigger program than we do certainly, they contract out their program. You see their costs there. I ask them all for their contracts. They're in the process of trying to find a way to buy a fleet and own and operate, because they realize they will get better service rather than calling Chicago whenever there's an issue, and it'll save them money. So we believe that is the case. I am certainly no expert in all these things, and I'm sure those of you that are accountants can find better ways to do this analysis than I have. But big picture, it saves you money. Every time I run those numbers, it looks like it saves us some money. So let me dive into the capital bit of it, because that's really one component of the operation. But I just know every time we talk about capital, a few folks go, sell the buses, contract it out. My professional opinion, that is misguided.
Okay.
So my proposal for FY26 would be 2 71 passenger buses. The total cost there is a better part of $250,000, which is not cheap, no question about it. A little bit about the context for the proposal, though. We've got a slate of 4 2014 vehicles that need to be done with their useful life. For those of you that met Lee, our mechanic, he's been doing it for the better part of 3 decades here in Carver, operating your program. He will keep a bus up and going as long as he believes it is safe. At a certain point, it gets to that edge, and that's when we say it might be time. Yeah. We've got 4 2014s. This would replace 2 of them, with the goal in FY27 replace 1 more. FY28, the last 2014, and 29 we start going to 50. Yeah. One of the reasons we try to do 1 and 2 roughly every year, some years we don't, last year we did 0, is because it's better to do these slowly than try to get a big chunk of them. That's what our colleagues in Plymouth are being jammed up on. The cost is astronomical, and just the onboarding process of new vehicles is complicated. We're still going back and forth with our vendors with the new vehicles from last year. because everything's got a computer on it now, and everything, like, it's a little over-engineered, to be honest, just like your car is, and just like your buildings are. There's probably too much technology on these things, but there is, and so onboarding vehicles takes a lot of time. So 1 or 2 is more helpful than 3 or 4. Yeah.
How long does it take to get a bus?
Right now, we're 8 to 10 month lead time, so it's
Okay.
not as bad as a
Yeah.
fire engine. And that's better than the past couple of years where it's been 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're in better place, but I will say pre-pandemic, they had them on a lot. And you'd be
Oh.
like, we would like that one, and they'd be like, here are the keys and drive it away. That's just not the way it is anymore.
So you don't have any negotiation to get a lower cost either?
We bid it. Oh, we
Oh,
bid
you
it out
did? Okay.
every single year. We bid it, and we also did the OSD contract. Since you asked, I'll spend 30 more seconds. I'm sorry, this is probably too much detail. Operational Services Division is like a part of the Massachusetts government. They do a bunch of stuff. One of the things they do is they take the buying power of the Commonwealth, and they go and they get contracts for things that we all buy in government. One of those things is vehicles. VEH 111 is the contract we use, and we look at that and we say, the state went out to all the people who sell buses and negotiating with the expectation that every district in Massachusetts could buy a bus from you. So much more buying power than Carver would have, and they get a price. Unfortunately, for buses in Massachusetts, there's only one vendor right now. So they have a lot of leverage. So what we do is we put it out to bid anyway. Is the price probably going to be the OSD price? Probably. These guys aren't stupid. But I put it out to bid. It's a nationwide bid.
Oh, I was
And
gonna say,
so-
can you buy from New Hampshire or?
Absolutely. Buy it from whoever wants to
Wherever.
give me a bus that meets my specifications, right? And Lee, our mechanic, works on our specs every year to make sure they're up to all the registration requirements for buses and those sorts of things in Massachusetts. Last time we did a bid, we had one Connecticut vendor, but they came in higher than our existing vendor, so we went with that vendor. But we bid it every single year to try to get the best price and to keep our vendor on their toes to know that when we call them about a part, if you can't help us out, we're gonna go find somebody else, even if they're in Connecticut or
Right.
wherever.
Okay.
It's a super good question. So anyway, that's our proposal for the buses. The next item on transportation is the special education van. This is a little bit different. This is not our proposal for a replacement. This is a proposal for an additional. Since the pandemic, unfortunately, there has been a spike in special education student needs and homeless students in the Commonwealth. I'm not an expert on why that is, but it is very real. And Carver is no exception to that, unfortunately. So the number of kiddos that were transported to special education programs outside of Carver has increased, and the intensity of the need, so the distance that we're going to these places has increased. We're driving students to Brighton right now, one way, hour and some change, right? That sort of thing. But that's the only school that does the thing that this student needs, and we can't do that here in Carver. Yeah.
Can I
The same
just-
is true with homeless students as well. Those numbers have exploded,
Yeah.
unfortunately. And that's a situation in which when a kiddo becomes homeless, our goal is to try to provide them transportation to keep them here in our schools. It's part of the regulations and laws. And it's just the right thing to do for a poor kid who's doesn't have a house right now.
Right.
My point is though, those all require vehicles. What we can do, because we do want to operate, is we can buy a cheap van essentially, and then do the upfit to make it look like a school bus. You see the school bus sign, and there's a bunch of safety infrastructure that goes into that. We do that in-house. So it saves us quite a bit of money on the upfit, and our proposal would be to buy one van. Right now, we're buying Siennas, those are the cheapest ones, but before we were buying Caravans, but they don't have those. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, I'm just wondering, where this is a new vehicle, do you have to hire a new driver?
Yes. Yeah. And we've had that over the past couple of years. If you look at our analysis, it's typically cheaper to hire a driver and buy a vehicle, because again, I think about some of these companies have realized that there's only a handful of companies that do this work. And they charge what they want to charge, and they make their profit on this as well. So
Yeah.
we had a couple of, we call it contracted transport services over the past few years that had been $500, $600, $700 a day for one kiddo, which is just, it's highway robbery. But if that's the only, if they had one,
One was about $95,000 last year.
yeah.
Yeah.
For the year.
But if that was the
So
only
that
one we
was,
could get.
that was with the
it.
van and the driver.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, let's buy one.
yeah, you get your money back in a year typically, right?
Because-
For some of the expensive ones. It may be a few years for some of the less expensive.
Because it is a minivan, can you buy one that's used a couple years old, or is there
We
like?
have in the past too, bought, especially if you're in a pinch.
Right.
We bought some used ones as well.
Because you might be able to get like two for the price of one.
The short answer is yes. We've done some used ones as well. One of the challenges is to where we get the used one from. We've been burned a little bit on some of the used ones. Lemon laws kicked in for us on a couple of occasions where we had to go back and like fight people for things. But the short answer is we have a few used vehicles that have come in, for
Okay.
sure. That's transportation in a nutshell. I'm sure we'll have questions. I'd love to open it up for you.
I already asked mine.
Let me pull up our little file here just so we can look at it together. Bear with me a moment.
Just so you guys know, we did take a field trip. I think it
Yeah, I missed it.
December
I did-
18th.
I missed it.
Yes, it was very fun.
It was very enlightening.
It was
Yeah.
freezing.
Yeah. It was so
Yeah,
cold.
I know, it was a
cold day.
So
day of the
cold.
year. But I would encourage you to do it. I think it's a
Yeah.
great practice. I know we did it in Middleborough all the time. We looked at every request.
Their names.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you really want to see.
I think
Yeah.
Alan got under the.
He literally got
buses.
under
Under
them.
Oh, good for
Yeah.
them. I'll take some pictures and send them.
I think I did.
That's funny.
Well, if you, I'll take a rotted frame on
Yeah,
a vehicle.
What is it?
That's
We
not.
got coffee for people, we didn't get any cream.
So what questions can I answer for you about all things transportation, about our FY26, you name it? How can I be helpful?
I want to go back to the summary sheet again. I love these summary sheets. Okay. And I just see a fluctuation on the cost of the 71 passenger bus. Are we proposing multiple buses on
Yeah,
one
two
year?
buses.
Two and one, so we'll buy
Yeah.
two buses,
Yeah,
then
okay.
one bus, and
Okay.
two.
Typically, with the exception of 29, again, you see like, we have
Right now,
built
we take everything
out
out.
our schedule to avoid 29.
Yeah.
And there's a built-in escalator there, you're gonna ask what it is. I get it from OSD each year, and I can't remember off the top of my head. It's something like 5%. I can get that if you're really keen about the escalator. What other questions can I help answer for you?
Well, I guess coming into what triggers the replacement, you mentioned you have two 2014s.
We have four
So-
2004.
Yeah, but two coming up, two 14s
Two
you're
back,
asking to
yeah.
replace, right?
Yeah.
So when you evaluate that, is it, obviously it's age, you said roughly 10 to 12 years.
Yeah.
I think this has 100,000 miles on it, but does the maintenance on it show that like the past 3 years, you're throwing $5,000, $10,000 a year into this thing, and it's just time to get a new one? Or is it just, hey, you know, some companies turn around and say, look, front-end loaders, I deal with Makepeace when I worked there. You'd buy a new one, and when it hit like 30,000 hours on it or something like that, you turn around and just program a new one into it, only because you wanted to reduce your maintenance down the road, because if you didn't, you're gonna pay an arm and leg for maintenance. So we didn't really look to turn around and say, hey, is it falling apart, is it this? It was just hit a number and we put it in the queue to replace it. So how does this work with buses from a standpoint of, you got your trigger, you look at it, is it maintenance costs or is it just age and mileage?
It's a combination of all of those things. And I go back to Alan, who was under the buses the other day. He looked under one of the buses and he's like, came up, he's like, you gotta replace this. I said, oh no, that's not gonna replace for 2 more years, my friend. And I go back to our mechanic. His job is to try to keep these on the road as long as he can, so long as they're safe. And we do a combination of mileage, and typically it's body rot, to be plain with you.
I think I heard that.
If
Yeah.
we were sitting in Tennessee, you'd probably get more years out of these. We just don't have that luxury. So every time you're driving down the road and you see that white layer of salt that keeps the ice off, it's eating away the bottom of your bus. Once we start replacing things like fuel lines and brake lines and fuel tanks all at the bottom of that bus, that's usually around that 10 to 12 years, 100,000 miles. That's when you're starting to sink a lot of money into doing replacement parts, and you're starting to pull your mechanic away from other preventative maintenance to keep a bus on the road. So to answer your question, it really is all of those things. And I'll be very plain with you, there's no formula, right? This is both an art and a science. There's no spreadsheet that turns red and says it's time. We take a look at each one individually, and if we say if we really need it, we're gonna need it, and if we can hold off on it, we try to hold off on it.
Going back to the comparison with Makepeace, we had a fleet of trucks, and because they spent so much time out in the bogs, snow, ice, dirt, just wreaked the bottom of the trucks. It just did a lot of damage. So one of the programs we had in place was that, I don't want to call it a car wash, but it was something built where they'd come in and there's a hose there, whatever, and they could, clean off the bottom. There's no really car wash for buses or something like that to try to keep that salt off the bottom of it, or do you have a?
His name is Ben. He's our old colony intern. He washes the buses.
Okay.
Anytime that they're on the road and it's salted, Ben's under the bus with a hose. It's not very high tech,
Yeah, yeah.
but it gets the salt off it generally.
That sounds like an unpleasant job.
Got it.
That's why he's an intern.
When you retire a bus and sell it, does that money go back into buying the new bus?
Two ways, and sometimes, depending on the year, we'll actually roll it in as part of a trade-in. So this number the number that you had up there for FY '26 is an estimate based on the FY '26 OSD numbers.
Okay.
If that number comes in higher, well, then I'll put the bus in as a trade-in so I can actually get the new bus, right, to like get us across the finish line. If, however, it comes in lower, we will sell the bus through a third-party vendor or directly to another school district if they're in a jam. Wareham down the street also owns and operates, and Situate owns and operates as well, and we have contacts over there. And if they're in a need and they want to get one of our buses for a spare, great, everyone wins, right?
But if it's not safe for us, why is it safe for them? It's just their call.
That's the
Standard.
Got it.
That's up to
Understood.
them, yeah. And we do use the money, it goes right back into the money we use for Lee's parts. It'll buy us,
Okay.
Parts and
That's-
equipment.
yeah, parts,
that's-
equipment, those sorts of things.
But the traded value is not good on these things.
It just isn't. And if anyone can find me a better way to get good trade-ins, let me know. We use our third-party organizations, New England Transit. They're sort of the sector standard in the area, right, in the area, New England area. We've been using them for 20-some-odd years, but if you've got someone that can get us more than $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a bus, that's what we get.
Oh my goodness.
You let me know. I'd be happy to talk to anybody else.
So a 10-year-old bus with 100,000 miles on it is only worth
$2,000, $3,000, $4,000.
$2,000-$3,000.
Sell it to somebody that wants to make it a tiny home.
That's what I was just thinking, like a RV.
Yeah.
Scrape off the Carver Public Schools, we'll sell it to them in a heartbeat, seriously.
HGTV.
Yeah.
So that is the downside of these things. There is a very limited resale network and therefore a very limited resale value, unfortunately.
Interesting.
I'm surprised.
That's shocking.
Yeah, sure. But the,
It's another
what
job you
reuse
get
do you really
into
have for
after
it,
you're
right?
retired.
Yeah, what else is gonna use besides another school district?
They probably have the same standards, they may not want to buy it.
Right.
Be like
Jennifer was saying, right?
college band or something.
If it's not safe for us, why is it safe for another town?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wareham had been buying them for parts for a while because we use the same vendor, and so they strip it for parts. That's an option as well we could think about. I would say then you're storing old parts that are like engines are big, so
Then what do you do with the shell at that point?
they
Still gotta get rid of the shell.
They stick it outside.
Right,
It's sort of nice. Anyway, we think this
Well,
proposal
you make it a
works right
classroom.
now.
right.
If you've got contacts that can help us sell these for better, please give me a ring. We'd love to have it.
Yeah, thank you. That was just mostly curiosity.
Other questions on transportation that I can help answer for you?
Is that schedule in this book?
Yes, all of that.
You want the fleet schedule, I imagine?
That one you got up there, the cost schedule?
Did I pass that around?
Oh, was that?
Yeah,
What was
it's
that?
this
Yeah,
one
he
right
did
here.
pass out
That's
on
that.
the.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
One side is the out-of-district kiddos, so this is your 7D minivans, like that sort of thing. I'll give you some orientation to the calculus, and feel free as you look at it, if there's a smarter, better way to do this, let me know. This is our actual, so I don't build it off of budget, I build it off of what was actually spent. We do this thing at the end of the year called the end of the year report, it's like our audit every year. This is off our audit essentially. So this is the money that went out the door. This is a portion that goes to this particular area. It includes the health insurance for the employees that drive those vehicles. It includes the capital plan, so we bought a couple of minivans back in '24. That gives you your total annual cost, let's call it $500,000 for OOD, for example. They run about 220 days a year. Some cases they run more, some cases they run less. These kiddos do more days in school because they are disabled. Yeah. So there's your daily amount. Those are the number of runs we've got going right now. It is 13 per day, per run, $137.18. There's no one contract standard, so unlike the yellow buses where you can see, Plymouth, this is how much they pay for their daily rate, and Middleborough pays this. For the out-of-district 7Ds, they do a calculation unique to the kiddo and the distance and the disability. So in some cases, the kiddo requires certain strap-ins and like those sorts of things to keep them very safe, right? But from our experience, it ranges from about $250 to $650. The average is $450. So we say, hey, if you take that $450 a day per route, there's your annual cost, the better part of, 1.2 million. We spend about $500,000. You save something like 61%, about $800,000 a year, roughly. In your yellow buses, that's a little bit easier for you to look at because that's more standardized, right? So if you were to call a first student, for example, right, that's the folks that a lot of people use. Again, you can see this is our cost all in from FY24 actuals, the better part of $500,000. You add in the health insurance for your big yellow bus drivers. You add in the fact that we bought a bus that year, $126,000 in capital for a new big yellow bus. All in, you're at $750,000, 180 school days. There's your daily cost times your routes. You're at about $360 a day a route, and that construct is how all of the contracts are built, right? So if you called for a student and you bid it out, they would bid it that way, per bus, per route, per day. So I called colleagues that I know in the area. Again, I'm sure you can find a more scientific way than just calling people I know, but I called them and I said, give me your contract number for FY24. They did. This is the contract numbers that you see. I took an average there. It's about $450 a day on average. It varies. Couple notes are important. They don't include sped. They don't include homeless. They don't include sports. That's all like
Separate.
It's a la carte.
Yeah,
That's the word I'm looking
those-
for. Yeah. So that's outside of that. So, and again, in my analysis, I back those out of our figures as well, which is why you see bus driver salaries only 90%.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they do sports runs and field trips and those things that would be a la carte as well. It's not perfect, but I think it's thoughtful, yeah? And so your annual cost, if you went to contract, is just shy of $1 million. Your annual cost here is about $750,000. You save something like $200,000 a year owning and operating your yellow buses. We think that generally that's a savings. I could be off a little bit there. Again, I want to be clear, I'm not a professional
Analyst?
analyst on this thing, but I know enough about the numbers in the program to know this is roughly where you're at. Other questions on transportation that I can be helpful with?
I think it's a great savings.
I think so. I think, like I said, I think you get a better product generally. I'm gonna move on then to be considerate of your,
Quick question, why in general then would a district turn around and hire contractors
Because they sold their buses,
to fund
whatever.
program?
It was I don't know what the cost was 20 years ago, because I wasn't involved, but it was probably in the 90s. It became very popular to go to using a vendor. And those districts, in the 90s, districts sold off their buses. So, again, anecdotal, but when I'm meeting my superintendent's roundtable, and when they hear that we have our own transportation, they're like, God, I wish we could have that. But they just can't, because they can't go buy 17 buses right now.
So it's not like it works for a big city like Boston, it just doesn't work.
it's not that it doesn't work. And I go back to, so 4 years ago when I first came on, our friend Alan cornered me and said, you guys need to sell the buses, this is the worst idea. And I had this conversation and we showed him some of the data. And so I do think that some of it is just misinformed. I just want to be plain about that. Like I think that, because it feels convenient to go, someone else will do this. But usually when you let someone else do it, now you're not in charge of it and they're going to charge you for their expertise and time.
Can I just ask, so before I lived in Carver, I lived in Braintree. And in Braintree, they charge 6th grade and up to ride the bus.
Yeah.
We used to.
I just wonder, like, do our neighboring, I don't want to see that, but I'm just wondering if other towns do that.
Some towns do that.
Abington did that.
They did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sometimes you do that. I don't have any data behind it, so this is purely anecdotal, but my sense is districts are trying to pull away from that.
Yeah.
With the expectation of, our goal is to get your kid to and from school and give them an education for free, and that's what's in the Commonwealth's charter.
It wasn't expensive. I remember when we lived there, my daughter, when she was in 6th grade and up, it was like $1 a day.
Yeah, we used to
But
charge,
still.
we would charge you $150.
Okay, so we
Right,
paid,
bus.
yeah,
And then I
one,
think it went to 200. So it started at 150,
yeah.
went to 200.
Nobody paid.
No, people paid. The last time I remember, because I wasn't the superintendent at the time, so I was the principal at Toledo High School at the time, and Liz Sorrell was the superintendent. And, you know, the number I remember her saying is that we brought in about $80,000 a year through the transportation fee.
Yeah.
Ridership went way down. You know,
Yeah,
parents said, I'm not gonna pay the bus fee, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna have my kid.
Bottlenecks the drop-off spot.
Oh, they drive, yeah, they all,
Yeah.
everybody's driving to school, and it's.
Which a lot of people
I'm
still
just
drive,
wondering.
and we talked about that a little bit in terms
Yeah.
of, people still have to sign up saying they're gonna take the bus, and not some families don't, but most families do, because they wanna at least have the option to take the bus.
yeah.
Yep.
You know, so.
And some do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, because Nana's picking up on Tuesday, like it's got a
Right,
whole
oh,
company.
variation
Yeah.
of things that happen there.
One of the scenarios I've seen is like if you live within 1 mile of the
Yeah.
school, you had to
We were
pay.
2 miles.
Or something
Yeah,
like
you're
that,
not,
yeah.
you're not required under state law, you're only required to transport through 6th grade. So after 6th grade, you don't have to transport anybody.
Okay, Yeah, that was
So
it.
you know, and then also, I believe it's 1 mile.
1.5.
So, 1.5. So if
1.5.
if you live within 1.5 miles of the school district, you're not required by law to transport.
Yeah, yeah.
I was just curious.
Yeah,
Right, because the other part of that is we're only when we charge, we're only charging the middle
Yeah.
high school kids, because
Yeah.
1 through 6, you're required to transport.
Right.
Yeah, that's all they charged too.
Yeah, because they can't charge for the elementary kids.
Gosh, I don't know about Quincy now, but when I lived in Quincy, 6th grade and up, we took the MBTA bus. We didn't even have yellow buses.
Boston does that with, they used to be the
But-
Charlie card, but it's not the Charlie card anymore.
Yeah.
It's whatever the thing is that's replaced the Charlie card.
Yeah. In Washington, they take the T.
Yeah.
Many of them take
Yeah.
T.
Other
You see, I
questions?
didn't take the T, not the.
Or the commuter rail.
Yeah,
commuter rail.
really, yeah. Other questions on transportation, so they can be considerate of your time.
Yeah, one last question. With regards to number of buses, do you keep any like in reserve?
We do, we have spares as well.
One,
Uh,
two, what's the number
We
typically?
typically have 2. Right now, we have 4. And the reason we've got 4 is 2. One, we actually reduced one of our routes last year. And we're analyzing whether or not we have to get that route back. So we have a lot of parents who are saying it would be super if you had that route back because the buses are very full and it takes longer, obviously. We're trying to balance this service with efficiency of resource. So I'm hanging on to those extras in case we gotta have that route back. But if after 2 years we're not keeping that route, those get sold off as well. We typically keep 2 to 3 buses. The same is true with our wheelchair fleet as well. We have a wheelchair vehicle, so it's a minibus that we keep in spare reserve. And I've got a minivan that's wheelchair compatible, that's spare reserve. So if something goes wrong with one, Lee's got it in the shop for a couple days. I'm not having disabled kids stuck at home.
Right.
Good questions. Any others? Okay, we're going to move to technology. Technology's a little bit boring, but I'll give you some context for it nonetheless. You just have your executive summary here. It's 10 years out. One of the things that's helpful to be aware of is we do write a lot of grants in this realm. The very first request for 2026, we're on page 12, is Chromebooks. You can see that the request is for $0. We wrote a grant that's a continuing grant. Gosh, pandemic time, right through will be 26. And it saved the town the better part of 350 grand in technology. So thank you, federal government, ultimately, which we all pay taxes to in a different way, I suppose, but it saved our local community about $350,000. It'll be a capital asset, as you talked about appreciation. It still depreciates, but it depreciates off our direct book. The next one is probably one of our top priority projects. It's our middle high school PA system. The request really focuses on our educational blueprint around supporting safe schools. A little context, your current PA system at the middle high school is original with the building, 1987. We have been working over the past few years to keep that system up and going. It's really on its last leg. We have several classrooms that don't have communication at this point.
It's a safety
Oh,
concern
that's
right
not
now.
good.
Yeah, so we're thinking, we think that at a minimum, we want to be able to get communication out to classrooms in an emergency, like those sorts of things. We've tried a couple of different mechanisms, they're not working, and so we think that what we'll do is we're gonna keep a lot of the front-end infrastructure and replace the wiring, essentially. We live in rural area, there are field mice. The field mice love the wires, there's no wires left. So we're gonna put some wires, A, that are digital, and B, that are coded with something that they don't, field mice apparently don't like. And we think that will bring your infrastructure up to function and bring it through the useful life of the building.
Quick question, I guess, for Glenn. Wouldn't that be qualified for Harper with like a safety aspect to it? No?
I don't know, that's a good,
Yeah, where are we in terms of
Where are you?
funds?
Where are you?
No, I'm just saying, if we'd asked,
Yeah, just curious.
I would have thought that would have fallen in one of the buckets. But
Yeah.
I think we don't have any of the funds left, is
We
my
don't.
inclination.
no, but if we, yeah, well, right now, we're stretching to find ways to use it, and I think this would have been a better use of funds. But,
If you want to tag it as ARPA, let us know. This one we can move on pretty quickly. It's just Cat 6 wiring.
yeah.
And I will say in terms of, we didn't bring it forward as an opera project, because we were trying to resolve this. So we've spent the past year or two working on the vendors saying, oh, we can do this solution, this
Patch it
solution's
this
gonna
way,
work.
patch it this
Patch this
way.
way, patch that way. It works temporarily, and then we've abandoned that. So probably on our side, a year ago, we didn't bring this forward as an opera project,
Yeah,
And for the
which maybe would have
ARPA,
been one that would have been approved.
sure.
for the ARPA, we had the commitments had to be placed by December 31st, 2024. So all the commitments would have.
Yeah, no, I know we can't do it. I'm just saying, but some of the projects at the end, I would rather have done this than that.
Rather than- Yeah, I
Yeah.
understand your
Yeah.
point.
I'm going to move on for you. The next couple are educational equipment, so elementary school technology. Again, you've heard this before, but you've got the better part of, 1.2 million integrated technology in that building. It's a high-tech building. To maintain the building so that we're not hitting a glut all at once, some of that equipment is already getting put into useful life. That is a frustration that we have. I imagine we share that with you. If any of you have a smartphone in your pocket, I'm guessing that it's probably under 6 years old, because at about 6 years, they stop working. With that said, we are at the mercy of some of these tech companies, and we're buying those, yeah.
And these are better.
Yeah.
These are gonna last longer, I think. I think they're gonna last.
Yeah.
And they're cheaper if they don't.
Yeah, I think they're gonna last 10 years, not 5.
So that's our replacement cycle, 25 through 27, you see that last paragraph there we're in right now, that will replace the AV equipment, those short throw projectors with what you see there. Less expensive, easier to repair, and hopefully a longer useful life. We just did that, finished that cycle with the middle high school.
Yeah.
We're now starting a laptop cycle, so like all of you have and like I have here, our teachers no longer have desktops, they have a laptop because they move from classroom to classroom, and that laptop gets cycled out, so we're not buying them all at once, we buy them out in cycles.
And that's it?
Big picture, there's your 10 years, every bucket, all at once, rolled down to the bottom, you see your totals. So for FY '26, 761,000 is the total proposal. We sub it out into each of the buckets, 313 for facilities, 302 for transport, 145 for technology. I also put at the end of the presentation just a quick update on the projects that you approved last time. Right? Sometimes we forget about the stuff that's going on. I'm not going to read them all to you because you can all read, but I want to highlight 3 if I can. The first is the culinary renovation that's just completed. If you had a chance to go to the open house, it was brilliant. If you haven't, call us. We'll get you to come visit Chef and his kids. They're doing incredible work there with a world-class space. And again, thank you all for your support with that project. It's been a decade in the making and 2 years in the actual building, and it's just really cool.
I heard it's wonderful.
It's a
really
really
nice.
beautiful
That's a great
space.
space.
The other I'll share with you is the concession stand. It's the page 17 at the very bottom. So I talked about at the beginning, our goal, sort of our Venn diagram with the capital committee here is to be efficient with resources. A few years back, the community was trying to find a way to build this concession stand. The number that was being floated was hundreds of thousands of dollars to build this thing. It's essentially, to build it goes under a different part of the law that costs more money. This is a long short, right?
Right, well, we were
Yeah.
building the stadium.
Yeah,
So
it would have changed it to a building project
Right.
versus a flat project, and that
Would have
costs
had
more.
OPM and would have, yeah, all kinds of things.
And so we've been trying to find ways to still deliver on this because we think it's good for the community, it's good for our schools. And so I reached out to our colleagues over at Old Colony and New Bedford Voc, and they picked it up as a project for us. And so we just did the concrete. That's something we did in-house. We did an article last year for that. That covers a lot of the concrete work because they don't do concrete. Concrete's done. You can pop by and stand on it if you want to. But in the spring, Old Colony will come down with their students. They'll do the construction. New Bedford Vote will come down and finish all of the utility essentially, and we're hopeful by the summer, we'll have a concession stand for a fraction of the
Awesome.
cost.
Yeah,
That'd be
that's
great.
wonderful.
That's good.
I know that was a lot, I ran long, I'm sorry. Can I answer any questions that you might have about anything, school department, capital?
Yeah, any plan with regards to concession stand? I've never heard people talk about, bathrooms. I know that's a big ticket item, I don't know that.
We couldn't put bathrooms in it, because if you have bathrooms, you have to meet the standard of, so we went to the building inspector in town, and they said they have to meet the standard for the bleachers, which I don't want to call it the standard, but basically the bleachers sit 500, and if you're gonna have 500 people in bleachers and you're gonna put bathrooms outside, I think it's one bathroom for every
10 or
100.
something,
I
yeah.
think it's every 100. So in essence, you can't just put one bathroom in, you have to put you have to put,
Like 10 in there.
yeah, you
I
gotta
think
put
is
5
better.
bathrooms in.
Yeah.
So that just made that made the project prohibitive to put bathrooms.
But there's no regulation on like the porta potties, because you don't
There's
have.
no regulation on the porta potties. So you can not have bathrooms, which is so funny.
crazy.
So you can either have, if you're gonna put bathrooms in, then you have to meet the standard. Or you can just not have bathrooms.
Interesting.
So if you notice, a lot of the schools that are building these facilities, they're building huge bathroom
Banks
complexes.
of bathrooms.
You go to Taunton High, which is a big stadium. My kids go to Taunton High. It's like, you feel like you're in Gillette. There's a bathroom complex. There's just bathrooms. Because they had to meet the standard. But the building inspector can tell us what the standard was.
I want to say it's 50.
I mean, it's one per
bathroom
50.
is my remembrance.
I
but
can't
don't
remember
quote me
50
on
or
it.
100, or.
It was more than one bathroom was the problem. We
Yeah.
don't have money we have money for one,
Or not to build a
not more
complex.
than one.
Right.
Right.
So it's porta potties, unfortunately. But my kid goes to Silver Lake, it's porta potties there too.
And when there are events, is the school open in case we have to go to the school, people?
The school's open,
School's
yeah.
open, they can
Yeah.
use that bathroom.
That was one way to get around it, but we're too far away, is if the field is within so many yards of the school, and the school's open, then you don't have to meet the standard. Well, you have to meet the standard, but you can count the inside bathrooms, and then we meet the standard. And then the other thing, which was a discussion point at the time, was supposedly those are temporary bleachers, and if you have temporary bleachers, you don't have to meet the standard. Because they are temporary bleachers, those bleachers can be removed. But the current building inspector said he did not believe in that theory. So that's what was told us when we built the stadium,
Yeah.
was that if you made temporary bleachers, then when you built the concession stand, you could have just one bathroom, because you don't have to meet the building code. But the current building inspector said that is not accurate.
Trying
So-
to get around it.
Yeah, no bathroom.
Yeah.
Any other questions I can answer for you? Be respectful of your time.
You did a great job. You
Yeah,
had
no,
my
this-
questions.
Yeah, this was wonderful. Thank you, guys.
Nice handout.
Yeah, very well done.
Thank you again for your support, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so anyone have any questions
I
for
do
the
not.
school? Okay, well, thank you guys very much for
Thank
coming
you.
tonight.
Get out of your hair.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Try to go home and get some sleep. So we only have the school come in tonight, so we don't have any other potential departments, but I put it on there just in case we did. Any other topics we want to bring up or talk about?
I had you wanted me to give just a brief summary in terms of financing, because we have a large amount, you can see it on here, we have a large amount of requests, around $3 million worth of requests for '26, but we do have different financing sources, so you're looking at around 700 in terms of tax revenue that we would need to support the capital for the town.
Yeah, could we talk about it? I'm not sure if everyone else wants to know, but how much do we think we have available for capital? And then how much do you think we would have to finance?
We don't know until the FY '24 budget is closed out and DOR has certified free cash.
Yeah, but we have to make decisions long before that.
Yeah. Do we know when they'll
Well,
certify?
Well, I can tell you, once the balance sheet is done and it's not completed, so maybe in February, but we do know that we have $400,000 of capital projects that we're closing out.
Good.
Yeah, but that money's not available.
But we can't
this
use
year.
it.
No,
No.
it's not available until
Right.
the free cash is certified.
So would it be safe for them to come up with, let's say, $1 million budget right now, knowing that maybe there's a priority in that listing where maybe things have
Yeah.
to drop off.
I just think that, yeah, we can't wait for February, we need a number.
Yeah.
And whatever that number is, call it $1 million. I think according to our policies, we're supposed to take a piece of that and pay down OPEB and some other items. So $1 million might be a wish list from a standpoint of who knows what free cash is gonna come in at. But I think what should happen is that we're given a number, we manage that number, and if when everything closes out, if the number becomes less, then it becomes a Board of Selectmen, have to, because I'm not speaking for you guys, I'm just saying that to do all this work now, and then all of a sudden, week before the deadline, have you come back in and find savings?
Like last
I
year.
don't think, I don't think it's fair.
Yeah.
So I think we should have a number, the group goes through and meets and does everything, makes a selection, whittles the list down to whatever that number is, and then they're done. And then if something changes, then it has to be the board's decision.
Well, Karen and I don't know when your next meeting is. Or maybe we can email.
Well, we need to just, we would probably maybe tentatively book a meeting tonight for our next one, or,
Right. I think we probably have to sit down with, and just kind of come up with a rough number. Again, I had this $1 million figure in my head, maybe we need to refine that even a little bit more.
We'll talk, I'm just go back and talk deadlines. April 9th is town meeting. March 9th, we want to be done with budgets, capital, everything's been done, finance. In February, we know that, changes in state aid have happened and whatever we have to account for, so the idea was to be done by February 9th, and that's the budget, capital, whole 9 yards. And thinking about that only leaves us 2 meetings roughly, right? To do it. So, that's why it's urgent that we get some kind of plan
Okay.
together.
All right, let's have a chance to sit down and come up with a number that we can throw at you. And again, knowing that you're gonna have to be flexible with it, and that's gonna be the bottom line, because we don't have free
Yeah.
cash that's certified.
Understood.
The only, and I don't know which agenda item, I kind of held it for a little bit here.
Yeah.
I do want the committee to know, so we have a new state senator, we have a new state representative. When I was in Rochester, our state senator was able to get us $750,000 for a salt shed. Our state representative was able to get us $50,000 for a feasibility study, right? So there's a little bit difference between the Senate and the House, right? I'm going to propose to our new state senator, right, that off this list, that they put $200,000 in the budget for the repaving of the Council on Aging parking lot. Now, I'll tell you now, there's zero guarantee,
Yeah.
right, that we're gonna get any of that money, but if you don't ask, you don't get, right?
Yeah.
So a little bit of the difference between the state senate and the state representative, I'll ask our state representative, if you look on the second page, the top police is the 40 square foot animal control. I want to, I see that's in the $50,000 range, and literally that's how I'm picking it, because I know, that again, there's a difference between
Yeah.
the Senate, and I'm gonna ask a little bit more on the Senate side than I am on the House side, but again, I'm just gonna ask them for that. I don't even know if they'll be able to get it into the budget, who knows, but if it happens, it happens. It's like a bonus for us, So I just want the committee to,
so it's I just want to make sure I marked them, the 50,000 for animal control.
yeah, that's on the
and
second
then
page.
200 for the,
Yeah, on the front page, under departments O and M, it's actually the last numerical.
when was the last time that they did that for Carver? Do we know?
I don't know, and that was one of the things that
Yeah.
happened in Rochester, like, they're very happy to help
Oh,
us,
thank
because
you.
we didn't put in a lot of requests.
Okay.
In fact, barely ever put in any requests, so I'm not sure the last time we had a request to our state senator, and they're both new, both first term. Again,
So-
Rochester had a state senator who was like third, fourth in line to the governor, and the representative was very experienced also, so.
The only thing for our committee though is, doesn't that usually come out in May and our town meetings in April?
That's, I mean, it's actually be.
It would be
next-
like a
it'd be next
bonus,
fis- Right, it'd be
yeah.
next, it really is like a bonus, because it's gonna be even next fiscal year.
Yeah, so we really wouldn't take that into consideration.
No, but I do have a question. Has the feasibility study been done for the Council of Aging? Because I know that there was discussions about like doing a feasibility study to see if they even want to keep that as the COA building
No.
or possibly, I don't know.
Correct, there has been no feasibility study done. So this would be repaving the parking lot, which is not in very good shape, and if you go down there also, it's repaving the road and the beach parking lot too.
Okay, so it's more than just that
It's
top
more-
part
it
that
is
I
more than
see when I
just the
drive
CO
by?
Correct.
Oh,
And if
okay.
you've ever been out to that beach parking lot, honestly, I don't know if you can really call it a parking lot.
Okay,
It's almost
okay.
like- it's almost
I'd have to
gravel
go look at it.
dirt
I
at
didn't
this point.
realize.
Yeah, so that's why, the cost is so high.
I was gonna
It's
ask
very-
you.
yeah. It's a little bit more than you would, I'd say it's twice as much as I actually thought.
Right,
Which, you know,
right.
just the price of everything is just like crazy.
Yeah,
Okay.
All right, but
That'd be
again,
great.
you know, if you see it in the newspaper or anything like that, you hear it on the radio, I just want you to know that, you know, put in the request. That's all.
On that same note though, about the feasibility study, do we have any plans on those?
Well, there is no COA feasibility study. There is money in the budget, you know, you
So,
approved it
we
last year.
approved it last
For
year.
the
Yeah.
fire
the 3
police.
buildings.
Yeah, John had said at a meeting, yeah, it was Dave Seaton talking.
Yeah, Dave Seaton
He had
talked.
said in a meeting a few months ago that would be coming up.
Yeah.
Spring.
Yeah, I'll have to-
Spring?
The old fire
Yeah.
department, the COA, and I don't remember what the third one was. It was a police,
The EMS.
Oh.
EMS.
oh, EMS
EMS
building, yeah, that's
building.
right.
I thought it was really just the old police fire station.
All 3 of them.
All 3.
Oh, wow,
I think there was a
It was
few on there,
50,000 for all
50,000.
3.
Yeah.
okay. I'll check with Dave Seaton talk again.
Yeah, he
'Cause-
mentioned it, it could have been at a finance
Yeah,
committee.
yeah.
Because we were curious to see if rec was gonna get a building out of that.
Yeah,
Because, you know, it's like, you'd hate to ask for 200,000 for
correct.
a possibility that, you know, next year they may, but they may
Yeah.
say, well, this building is not,
Well, we do think no matter, I would say, I believe, right, even if the COA building were refurbished, there is still a useful life of the COA building. In fact, I know people have talked about it as being a recreation department who
Because we
don't have
have
a home
the
right
beach
now.
there too, so it'd be
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah,
And the
and
pickleball
part of that
courts.
$200,000, I will tell you also, is when the pickleball court was approved, they cut back on the parking, so they're gonna add a little bit more parking on the side of the road going down to the beach for pickleball, so.
okay. So it needs to
There's
be
more
done,
than
it
just
needs to
the-
be done no matter what.
Yeah, it does
Okay.
need to be done no matter what, and I don't think I think we're wasting money, I kinda get to your point, right? I don't think we're wasting money, because no matter what happens, hopefully the building will still be in use at some form.
For something.
Right.
Okay, got you.
I mean, it isn't perfect for a COA, it's very disjointed.
Right, that's, right.
Yeah. But if you're wrecked and you don't have a building, then it's a lot better storage than no storage, right? Or,
Exactly,
you know, a bunch of little sheds all over town where,
Yes,
right.
which we do now.
yeah, which we do now, right?
One thing that the departments did is for their capital requests, and I can send you a copy of these, they have priorities, so if you,
Okay.
so as part of the capital request, they have a list of, you know, whether it's a health, a public safety issue where that needs to be done, and they have their capital requests in priority.
Okay.
So there could be requests that they could push out a year or 2, but they were just listing what their needs are, but they did have a priority list. If you have to start, looking at, okay, what do we need to narrow down? What is, definitely something that we need to continue in order to be able to provide service, or what is, a safety issue that has to be done. So if you want to look at those to help you,
I think that would help.
make a decision on, when we come down to how much we can actually fund.
Yep.
That should help, and all the departments know that, if they may not get all of their priority items, but maybe 1 or 2.
Right, so kind of like what you did last year, where you gave us like 1, 2, 3 for the priority.
Yes, and they have that,
Yeah.
but it's a lot more detailed, so it has, has a list of, everything you could think about regarding that capital project. It has a number to it, and there's different questions that they had to answer for each capital project, so that will give you something that you can use as criteria as you're looking at what projects that you want to fund.
Yeah, no, I think that would be great.
So I'll send that to you tomorrow.
Thank you.
So on this list, if you could, because this is what we used to get, which was kind of frustrating, was a capital list that had tons of items on it, and then a total. But that total didn't equal what was in the list, because
Yeah.
people might put like a K next to a number as a text field, so it wouldn't calculate. And they did that because it was going to be financed someplace else.
From a grant.
And it just became
Yeah.
so confusing, because we had no idea what we were approving. So if you could take this list and say, whatever stuff is already funded by ARPA,
Yeah.
Fed, other financing, get it out of this list into some grouping.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then leave us left with only the items that we have to try to find funding for.
Oh, absolutely. So I'll
Okay.
put that together. I'll send that
Thank you.
to you probably by Friday. And it
Okay.
will just show all the capital, the funding sources, and then just what you'd actually be looking at. I can
Well, no, I don't think we're
Oh,
saying the
is
same
that
thing. But I'm not saying just put the funding source here. I'm saying if this first page is nothing but federal funding, ARPA, other financing, fine. and then have a whole separate section that is just projects we have to deal with.
Okay, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah,
You can have
yeah.
that done. That's no problem.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The Ks used to drive me nuts, but you're right, at least we knew they weren't.
Yeah, we didn't know what was the number.
Yeah.
And you'll get it electronically, so you'll be able to go through, and then I'll include the capital request if you want. I can put the priority numbers on,
Okay.
you know,
Oh, that'll
on
be
the
good.
sheet, so you can see that as well as
Yeah.
you're looking at what would be funding through there.
And not to, I guess, keep dwelling on certain things, but I have a huge problem with, what was it? It's somewhere on here. All the old projects, right?
Yes.
We've got 2018, anything that's called a town-wide technology upgrade, right? I'm just looking at the 2018, there's 119,000. I don't see how anything can be ongoing. Meaning in 2018, I'm going by memory, I think the warrant actually said town-wide upgrades, 199,000. So I think we've only spent $80,000, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 6 years. So I'm saying whatever was in that 199, it's done, you know, and that there shouldn't be anything else ongoing. And that should be moved into free cash.
Okay, so we should probably bring John Neely in.
That would be helpful.
And talk about all of the upcoming and all of the upgrades that he already has, because he was in the
Yeah, he wasn't
IT
there.
tech, and he was given a number of articles that there were still funding, and he has a laundry list of upgrades that he would like to do. I think maybe
So, but they're
you-
not from 18, they're
Yeah.
something brand new now.
They should go back into free cash, and he should put his list together for the next,
Just-
for the next town meeting.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, he can't just sit, nobody can turn around and just say, hey, these aren't spent, I've got an idea for them now. Especially when we've got other technology, because, you
Well,
know,
can we use that money?
yeah, then we
Well,
got
you
other,
can-
because
but
there's
that's-
another-
So the thing is, when you appropriate it, because it is continued appropriation, they go based off of the description of what you're having. So if you say IT technology, and that is a continuing appropriation, as long as it's IT technology, you can use that until you decide to close it. But I agree with what you're saying. I think that when we look at the IT request, we should probably have a list of what the departments are actually going to use the money for. So if it's something like you're saying that was from 2019, it was an upgrade for PCs. If it was only an upgrade for PCs and all the upgrades are done, then that money should just close out.
So, would it have to be actually written into the town article, what they're gonna spend it on?
No, you don't have to have it
Okay.
written, but it's something that we can have similar to, it's just more detail in terms of, like, when you look at the other departments, they're telling you they're buying a truck, they're buying a replacement.
Yeah.
But, and I talked to John about this, having an itemized list showing what you're actually spending the money on.
Moving
Because
forward.
it might
I
be
feel like-
software that we have, you
Yeah.
know.
Because there's another
Yeah.
108 for 2024.
Yes.
Yeah. Because I do feel like they used to come and say, I'm buying this type of a technology. You know, we might not get a whole list, but it would.
well, I'm just thinking that somebody went before town meeting in 2018 and said, I need $199,000 for town-wide upgrades. So behind there should have been a list
Yeah.
of six, not a town meeting, but he or she, whoever was charged with it, should have had a list of 5 items, 6 items, 10 items.
Yes.
I'm gonna ask the IT guy, where's the list for the $199,000? And of that list, what has been completed?
Yeah, I don't think he has a list going back, but moving forward, I know that he has a list of projects that he's interested in, but it's up to you in terms of how you'd like to handle that.
Right.
But I've already talked to him about that, and I know that he can get that list, and I can get that to you. And that way, and I don't know, you know, that way you can have an idea of
I wonder if I still have
what
stuff.
those IT projects are, because if it's something that you're not interested in, saying, well, you know, maybe we don't need to do this for the town right now, let's push it off, then that's something that you would then have the, you know, authorization to say, look, we don't want to do this.
Right.
We don't need to have this done right now.
Because we could look at the
This is like
26,
a wish list.
yeah, we could look at the 27 fiscal budget and say, hey, that $100,000 is $100,000 in the 27 budget, maybe we'd like to use it for that.
Yeah.
And
Right.
usually for IT, you want to have it broken down by discretionary and non-discretionary in terms of what really is required in order to continue, because you have upgrades, you have software licenses, well, not licenses, but you have different software upgrades.
But that would be an
have to
operational
done.
expense then, right? After.
Yeah, so for licenses, I'm just saying if there's something for upgrades, it has to be done.
Right. And I remember last year, we approved all the computers that he was going to do for the town hall. So that, to me, is also technology upgrades
And
as
that-
well. Like,
No, but
so
changed
every
and
year,
changed and-
they're getting more money, and it's still ongoing,
And I
sitting
think
there.
he also told us last year that everyone in town hall has 2 computers, right?
I don't see it.
I
So
think
we
he
just
was,
we had 2 monitors, so I know that monitors were purchased because we're waiting for them to be installed, but I have monitors in my office that were purchased, that were.
No, he definitely, because I kind of went back and forth with them. He said they definitely had 2 computers. They had like a older.
A desktop and then a
Desktop.
laptop.
And then a laptop.
I thought they were
Yeah.
getting laptops and 2 screens, no? Is that what the?
But he also said that everybody had 2 computers so they could work from
Yeah,
home
there's
and in the
Exactly.
office.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
is something with the
Just thought it was
computers where they're
wasteful.
not all of the same model. So for instance, if you're on Outlook and I want to share my calendar, some of the computers have the technology to be able to share the calendar, and the ones that aren't updated, they can't. So there's different staff that don't have access to my calendar and can't update the calendar for certain things because the software has just not been updated on their computer. They
Interesting.
would need a different computer, a whole new computer, but I can talk to John, and if you want, at the next meeting, I can have him
Yeah.
come in and do an update of the projects that he
Yeah.
is anticipating doing, and an update on the old projects.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you guys agree?
Is that what
Yeah.
you like?
Yeah, I think we would.
I just think maybe and I think I might not understand, what we need is the request list, right, which I think you have, and then the documentation behind it, I think you mentioned that each department head took it and they put a ranking on it, what they need.
Yes.
So we need that.
Okay.
And then we really kind of need it to schedule your next meeting, right? To talk to, I'm not sure if this can be done in 1 meeting, 2 meetings, 3 meetings,
Yeah.
but we should start having meetings with the department heads just to.
Do you
Yeah.
want to bring back in fire, police, and EMS?
Well, EMS is looking for,
Well,
I haven't
They're
heard
looking
from
for
EMS
350
yet.
for an
and they're
ambulance.
That's their
looking for
ambulance
ambulance.
Coverage through the ambulance.
That's
Exactly.
why we get that out.
Yeah,
Right.
That would
exactly,
be
yes.
above and.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we have 2 that would cover through opera, so we don't
Yep.
have to bring
Okay.
that
I
in.
mean, if it's covered, no.
Yeah.
If it's already,
We could ask everybody to come back in. I just didn't know if we wanted to ask them again because we heard them back in January. It's up to you guys.
I got enough from the January personally.
all right, then we'll just go through the
Yeah.
paperwork.
Yeah.
And it's up to their option if they want to come and,
Right.
Okay.
and talk, they want to
Yeah.
come to the meeting and we go
I
go
just,
review it.
I mean,
Well,
I think
I-
IT we should.
I will say, I did ask the fire chief today
Yeah.
if he's talked to the committee about the ladder truck, and he said no.
I would guess.
He's
No.
So
not
do you-
yet, no.
do you want to bring him in? I mean, that's the biggest one.
Yeah.
biggest
I think we should
item.
give them the option,
Let's
to
do
turn
that.
around. Do you want to come in and refresh us?
And he was
our
anxious to
memory?
come in front of you, he definitely wanted to, so.
All right, we'll definitely
Yeah.
put it
And I know
out.
the police
Just
chief
didn't want to put
wanted
them out.
to, talk about the cruises that he was interested in the animal truck.
Okay,
So-
so
so-
I'll reach out.
That answers the question there.
So we did a visit to the bus fleet. Should we then do a visit
Yeah.
to the police to look at the cruiser? Just to,
Sure.
not to examine the cruiser, but just get an idea of what the
Yeah.
fleet looks like and.
Oh, yeah,
and
show and tell.
whatnot.
Do you want to do all 3 of them? Do you want fire, police, and EMS, or just police?
I'd like to get it all done in one day, if we do, if
Yeah.
a Saturday still works,
Bang it out.
go see all
Okay.
3 of them,
Okay,
and just get it done before, ideally before our meeting.
sure.
So we just can say we've, typly, I mean, I
At
said
least
before-
they're all local.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
I said this before, there used to be Jack Angley, he was on the select board, and he was a longtime Carver resident farmer, and he had mechanical experience. So he was on capital outlay, and he could go and he'd always go and visit these capital requests, where I'm an accountant, so I'll look at the paperwork, what's the cost, what's this,
Yep.
this and
That's
that.
kind of
I'd
like
like to see it.
Alan, where he
Yeah,
knows
Alan
what he's
got
looking
that.
at, and,
He went right underneath the bus.
exactly.
Yeah, I won't do that, but I'll,
Yeah,
You're not going under the bus.
I'm pretty sure I got a picture of him. All I can see is his
We
feet.
can jack it up for you. You can roll under it.
Yeah.
know what I'm
So let me
looking
throw some dates out to everybody and we'll try to do a Saturday again.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
that okay? Saturday
Sure.
mornings?
Yeah.
If that works for the
It works.
And we
chiefs
can
too.
take a look at the pond too, I mean, the area where the
Council on
senior.
Council on Aging.
yeah.
Thank
Oh,
you.
yeah, good
Yeah,
idea.
walk all the way through there.
Yeah.
Yeah, show it, we can show
I've
you
never
what
been
it
out of my
looks
car, I've just driven by it,
Yeah.
Okay.
so.
I could share the plan with you too.
Yeah,
So
that'd be
we
great.
had an engineering firm do a feasibility, it's not a detailed plan, they couldn't construct off it, but it'll give you an idea.
Okay.
That sounds
Right.
good.
Yep.
All right, I'll get some dates thrown together. Send some dates out to you guys that work for them and see what we can do. Perfect.
I was hoping there's a warm day coming, but I don't see it.
No, no, I don't think so.
Warm day,
Yeah.
can we fly to Florida?
I
Meet there?
wish. Okay, we can get that scheduled too. All right,
That's all I have.
anything else? So we'll do to be determined for our next meeting. Wait to hear from you guys.
So we're gonna be on the 21st though, right?
It sounds
For
like it.
Hilltop, yep.
For the
Yes.
select board meeting.
And we just need you guys to pick a number. If you say it's $1 million, then we'll
Yeah.
go with $1 million, but then keep in mind, you're gonna need $1.3 million if we're gonna hit reserve items.
Right, that's what we have to look at.
And not that I wanna say this every single time, but I will. Had we
Let me
kept,
put that in my calendar.
had we kept the solar money out of operations, you'd be looking at $2.2 million of cash to go into your capital.
Guys,
I know I just repeat myself, but I'm gonna keep repeating myself.
So I will not be here on the 21st. I'm sorry, I'm away for a conference.
Okay?
So I'm still looking into the solar and looking at what we can do to rectify that. So if there are things in art, if there are prior year articles where the transactions hadn't taken place, we could always put it in the FY26, and yes, that will free up some things, but I'm still looking into that.
Well, I'm talking about the 1.3 million in solar. The 100,000 is just for the school,
Yeah.
that we said we'd do. But, even if it wasn't the whole 1.3, if we had some kind of agreement where it was half or something,
Yeah.
we would have had a nice nest egg every single year to go back and look at this stuff. Now what we're doing now is free cash. What's free cash? It's the only thing we have to go and look at capital with other than financing, and the grant money's all gone. Federal's gone, ARPA's gone, so
And then we have
there's nothing else.
97 from the solar.
Yeah.
We have 97 set aside that
Oh, yeah?
we have set aside already for the pilot money that
Mm-hmm.
we've already set aside, so that's automatically available. So you have 97, that's a number I can say
Gotta be
on
tight capital
record that you have.
Yep,
I know.
yep.
But, we have other things to think about. We have the water, North Carver water subsidy, that we also have to find.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right, guys. Anything else for tonight?
Not for me.
All right. Do you want to make a
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Okay, motion made and second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Have a great
Thank
night.
you.
Thank you.